Hi, I'm Janine, and I am honored to have the opportunity to live, work, play, and create on these beautiful, unceded traditional lands of the coastal Salish people, specifically the Esquimalt, Songhees, and the Kongan-speaking peoples. It's pandemic time, and I'm staying home as much as possible, and I hope that you're able to stay home and be safe as well. We'll get through this. And today I'm going to be talking with David Steele, who is a scientist and an executive director at Earthsave Canada, which is a registered charity founded in 1989. Their focus is educational. They promote awareness of the environmental, ethical, and health consequences of our food choices and advocate a move towards a whole food plant-based diet. Dr. David Steele, the last time I spoke with you was on a rotary phone on my radio program, you may recall.
Yeah, a few years ago.
Yeah, because you had some trouble with your neighbor and the frequency or something. So
there was some problem. I got a different non-rodeo phone I can use now. But there used to be some kind of interference with some other neighbor or something. It's the frequency of the phone.
That's wonderful to have a rotary phone, and things have changed, and now we're in the Zoom room. And it doesn't seem like, sadly, our climate situation has changed for the better. That's what we talked mostly about last time. And then now we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So maybe we could just start with some science around our current situation. Where are we at with the climate crisis? We've sort of forgotten that while we're in this pandemic mode.
Well, it's clearly still the worst it's been, and it's getting worse, although the pandemic is helping a little bit. Things are slowing down. There's less driving and less flying, so that's gonna help us for the short term. But fundamentally, it hasn't really changed. It's gotten worse. It's followed the same trend it's always been following, getting worse and worse. And we're a bit lucky in a sense with the pandemic, if you want to call it luck, in that we're driving less and flying less, but we're not eating less. Most people are still eating the same kind of things they always ate. We'll get a tiny respite. It'd be wonderful if we learn from this crisis to start paying more attention to the climate crisis as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think between 2016 when we last spoke and now, there has been a rise in the sort of awareness of a vegan lifestyle and moving, I think, towards plant-based. And Greta, of course, came along, Greta Thunberg. Were you able to see her when she was in Vancouver?
I didn't actually get to see her, but I was part of the giant march. It just was too big.
Really?
She was somewhere far away. You could hear her, but you couldn't see her.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So that was good. And Earthsave, we took advantage of that too. We were handing out animal agriculture fact sheets, noting that Greta's vegan, and here's why you should be too. So we handed about 1,000 of those things at the event. So that was good.
That's great.
Easily.
They were receptive to that?
Yes, very receptive. We could have handed out many more than we had. We thought 1,000 was optimistic, but no. We probably could have handed out 3,000 or 4,000 if we had them and the people to do it.
Well, hopefully there will be a next time, and then we can get back to that. Greta doesn't really talk about being vegan, but she is. That's part of her.
Yeah, she is. You occasionally see her cited in an article saying she is, but you don't really hear her speaking publicly much about it. I haven't heard her speak anything on it. I have seen, her interview in print where she states it clearly she's vegan, and she's vegan for the environment in her case.
Right. And so Earthsave, you're definitely a scientist. I'm curious, at what point in your life did you realize you were a scientist, David?
Well, I guess as a kid, largely. I was very interested in chemistry and physics and things as a young child. I lost interest for a little while in high school, but then I made friends with an uncle who was a hematologist at the University of Michigan, and got very interested in talking with him and got back into it, and then got my bachelor's degree, my PhD, worked at Cornell, Queens, UBC for many years. Retired about, going on 7 years ago that I retired, but yes. I had a scientific bent from very early.
And what led you into, is it molecular biology?
Yeah, molecular biology, I actually, a couple of things. I had a friend who had a genetic disease, and so I was interested in, what's going on with her. She's okay. She's still around. I've heard from her recently. But she, it got me a bit interested talking with my uncle. Then I started digging for myself, and I learned how incredibly complicated this is and how much we don't know. And it was really interesting, so I went into the field.
And so what is there? What's the connection? Maybe with the pandemic, then somebody like you would understand what this virus is all about and how it's connected to animal agriculture.
Well, I know as much as anyone. We don't know too much, but we know it clearly came from some kind of animal, most likely a pangolin or a bat or some one of those animals in China. How it actually got into humans is not clear, but the more humans get close contact with animals, the higher the likelihood of virus infection. The more we have animals in very tight quarters, the higher the probability of virus development and infection. And rarely one of these viruses can jump into human, but once it does, if it's infectious, it'll then go on and get everybody if we're not immune at all. It potentially can infect 100% of us because we don't have immunity to it.
Right. So, wow. Yeah. Well, but isn't it just a Chinese virus? Aren't we just supposed to blame the Chinese?
That's what Donald Trump would want us to do, but I don't think that's a reasonable position. We need to blame our own incursions into nature, our massive exploitation of animals for no real good reason, and that's where it comes from. The fact that we have so many animals in close proximity to us, we're basically using, we're torturing them, we're killing them, we're eating them. That's the fundamental source of according to the CDC, about 3/4 of viruses come from that kind of source. Farmed animals or wild animals in close quarters with humans, or bushmeat, for example, in Africa, where people are killing animals in the bush and eating them. And that's probably where Ebola originally came from. We can never prove where things originally came from, but we can have good evidence that the odds are that is the case.
So are you able to explain to us, sort of as non-science people, how does a virus, what is a virus, what is this thing and how does it move from species to species?
Okay. A virus is a very strange little thing. It's not alive. It's a little bit of DNA, or in this case it's RNA, a little bit of RNA with a protein coat that it encodes for itself. It also encodes a couple of enzymes so that it can start copying itself in our cells. It uses our cells, the machinery of our own cells, mostly to replicate itself. It takes over our cells, replicates itself, puts out many, many copies per cell infected of itself, and infects the next cell, until our immune system can stop it. So they're little bits of code. It's like a little tiny bit of code that, if it can get into us, can take over our system and take over our much larger system to make copies of it instead of do what we need to do to keep ourselves alive.
Isn't that interesting? So would this be something that has always been on the planet and it's just that we're now coming into contact with it? Or is this sort of a brand new thing that has somehow evolved from the RNA of another animal?
They're very clearly very ancient in history, but there's new ones being, they mutate all like crazy. I got my crow friends come. I got a couple of crows who like to visit me every day, and they're coming now. You mind just a tiny break? I'll give them some peanuts. I'll be right back.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Because they come here ask for peanuts every day. I'm sorry. Well, 1 minute break, okay?
Very important.
I don't want to not feed them.
Yeah, this is
I'll be right back.
Wonderful thing.
This could be a teachable moment, though it more just looks like a mess. How long the moment might last is anyone's guess. For all of the bold propaganda, what kind of system is best? The moments like this one are the test. Where did they stay ahead of the curve? Where did they just run out of soap? Once the world shut down its borders, which countries were able to cope? Once this pandemic is over.
I think it's the female of the couple right now. She's more nervous than the male. The male will come to me. This one is, she left. She got a couple of peanuts. Sorry for the break.
No, that's totally fine. I worry a little bit about the urban birds because they're kind of used to more human scraps. And yeah.
Quite possibly. The male just showed up, the bigger one. Are you there? Yeah, okay, good.
You need to get more peanuts?
I put a load of them out there. They're fine.
So they're fine. Okay.
You can tell which is which. One's very comfortable with me. The other one's more nervous.
Really?
Okay,
That's
continue.
interesting.
I got way off topic. Back to the story.
No, this is totally on topic. We're vegan, right? We love
Hmm.
the animals. So, so is it okay? Do you think it's okay? It's okay to give peanuts to crows then?
Yeah. I don't give them huge numbers. I also give them some bread sometimes and other things. They come me for treats. They're only here once a day. They come once a day. They visit me. They usually come to the yard and start cawing. I come out and I give them their peanuts or their bread.
So
And they're
cool.
going to be nesting soon too. So they'll need, they'll need the food.
Right. Yeah. They need some sustenance as well. What was
Hmm.
that famous crow in Vancouver that
Yes. What
yeah,
was it? Canuck? Yeah, I don't
right.
know what happened to poor Canuck.
Yeah.
Hopefully okay, but definitely not around in public anymore.
Yeah, the last I heard it he had taken off.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
no one knows what happened.
That was really interesting. Like the story was he was being rehabilitated and then he kind of bonded with the guy
Yeah,
and
yeah,
followed him all over Vancouver.
yep. But maybe he found a partner. I hope that's all that happened. Who knows, though, right?
Let's hope. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's hope.
we don't have any way of knowing.
No, well, they're free birds, aren't they? Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, so let's get back to the little virus guys. So they're old, but they mutate and they evolve and adapt, and they get inside us and they figure out how to replicate our own
So
cells.
they take over. They get into our own cells and use what our own cells use to make themselves to make the virus instead. They take over the machinery that our cells use to maintain themselves to instead make the virus instead of do what the cells should do.
So they're trying to turn us into one big virus.
Well, they're not trying to do anything because they're not conscious in any sense. But their function is they function to simply once they get into something, they replicate and they take over our system, and that's how it works. It's just a repeat. It's what worked in the past. It's probably been working for billions of years, in evolving in sort of an arms race against whatever animals they can infect or bacteria. The vast majority of viruses infect bacteria. Actually, as a study a few years ago that measured the number of bacteriophages, which are bacterial viruses, in the ocean. It was some crazy number, huge number. For every mill, there's like for every little milliliter, there were many copies of the bacterial viruses. So these there's viruses everywhere, and they are sort of they're side little bits of genetic material that manage to get copied, that have by luck develops, or bad luck in our case, systems to replicate by getting into our own cells and then getting cells back out and to affect other cells just like them.
So I think I remember reading something somewhere about that. Is it maybe it's bacteria who don't want to kill their hosts? Like what benefit would it do if to kill us off?
Well, no, it doesn't do them any benefit. Well, all happens. It's just what happens. These things happen to replicate.
Okay.
They'll do better if they don't replicate so much. If they don't kill each other, kill us off, and it's just a matter of luck what they do. And these ones don't kill most of us. This particular one doesn't kill most of us, which is a good thing. It kills a lot of us, right? And it happens to get into us and take over and make more copies of itself. The side effects from that virus's point of view are irrelevant. It makes more copies of itself. If it kills us off, that's going to mean it's better in a sense that for us and those who are dead won't be infecting others. But it's just a thing that happens. If they make us only mildly sick, they're likely to last a lot longer. But our immune systems will still get them anyway, because eventually, if we expose to something, if it's not changing, our immune system will not be infected again. We protect ourselves from it. But
Okay.
it's just they just work. They just a non-living thing that has genetic code that just copies itself if it gets into us, and it's just what happens. You can't say you can't say it has a strategy. It just is.
Okay. Is there any evidence so far that you know of that once we've been infected with this particular COVID-19 virus that we will have an immunity to it?
Yeah. It's clear. There's always worry if it mutates more. Like about half of cold viruses are coronaviruses as well, right? If they mutate too much, we don't have immunity. If the proteins we bind to, our antibodies bind to on the outside of the virus, are gone, changed, then we won't have immunity anymore. But certainly for the short term, we're going to have immunity. Once you've had a certain cold virus, you're not going to get it again. But if the virus can mutate in time, such a experience a version that our antibodies can no longer bind to, then of course we're susceptible again. But that's highly unlikely to be a problem for a while at minimum. And hopefully, from what I've seen in the literature, it looks like it's not a very mutable virus, which is a good sign. That means there's a reasonable chance we can get a good vaccine and protect ourselves. But it's still going to take a while to get the vaccine. And so in the meantime, we have to try and make sure we don't get infected in the first place.
Right, right. And we're seeing in BC, we're doing a good job of that, it seems like.
We're getting there. Yeah, looks like we're flattening the curve.
Flattening the curve, yeah. Well, then we got the big Easter weekend coming up, and they've closed the BC park system, which, I guess makes sense.
Yeah, people will be tempted. You got to try and keep them from mixing, because right now that's how you get sick.
Right. On the other hand, I mean, it's so wonderful that people are sort of rediscovering nature in some way, I think, now. You can't go to the mall or the restaurant, so they go to the forest, and it kind of reawakens that love of wilderness that is part of why we all live here, I think. Yeah. Okay, so back to this virus. Now, I was reading that in Cuba has been traveling around the world with this interferon medicine for several weeks now, and helped China, Wuhan get back to normal. And they're in Italy, they've in Barbados most recently, various other countries. And I was reading an article that said that they started working on this on the co-virus, maybe not 19, but some coronavirus in 1986.
So it makes sense. Like half of cold viruses are coronaviruses, right?
Okay.
So if you get a cold, half the time it's a coronavirus. So it's not surprising people be trying to work on treatments for coronavirus. Interferons, if we're lucky, will sort of lower the symptoms. It's not going to be a cure. It's a standard. It's what our bodies produce to help fight. It's one of the things our bodies produce to help fight the virus. So it can help, but it will never be a cure. It's worth trying right now. A lot of things are worth trying. That don't expect a lot from interferon. It's not likely to do a lot for us. Okay,
well, apparently, it's helping ease some of the symptoms and helping people recover.
It may, yeah. Again, I haven't seen any good literature on it. I don't know how, a lot of these problems are doing uncontrolled studies, so we don't even know how to interpret them. Would the person have gotten better anyway or not? If you don't do a control, you don't know. Maybe the person would have got better anyway. You need to compare drug versus no drug to actually know. So we have this huge problem, and you've got to remember that 80% of us don't even get very sick. So it's really hard until we have proper studies to interpret any of these things. That's an unfortunate reality. That's the way it is. It might be helping. It probably does help a little. I don't see a good reason why it would help a lot. There's not good reason to expect it to help a lot. If it did, we would have long ago cured the common cold, for example. So it's not likely to help a lot, not this approach. But hopefully it helps some. And if it does, that's great. I'm not saying don't try it, but don't expect a lot from it either. And I'd love to be wrong. It'd be great to be wrong on this. But
I'll see what I can find for you, David. And I know you're a scientist, and that's great. We have to wait and look back to see the results.
We have to have proper studies to know whether, without the study, you don't know.
Right.
We can do all kinds of things. The person got better. We put the person's feet in cold water. They got better. Okay, well, was that really the cause, or they got better anyway, right? That's the problem.
Yeah.
Without a controlled study, we don't know.
Right.
Especially in disease where most people get better, right? So it's really hard to say.
And I wonder how much lifestyle comes into this. We know as vegans, we're not consuming products that inflame our lungs, for one thing, which is a detrimental.
Within limits, it's hard to say.
Right, exactly. But why is anybody keeping statistics on this? I know they've got sort of age statistics on who's recovering and who's not, but I'm curious to know about lifestyle,
Well, they'll do it retrospectively. Right now, I don't think they can collect that kind of data. I don't think it's possible to know right now.
Yeah.
I have a friend at the CDC in Atlanta who's an epidemiologist, and he tells me about, for like hydroxychloroquine looking like the latest they look like it's not working at all. The person tried to replicate it in France, I guess, and not surprisingly, it didn't do anything. So
yeah,
we've got all kinds of, we've got lots of weak evidence out there, and right now they can't really follow a lot. Right now it's crisis response mode,
right?
And check to see, and do studies on things that might work, right?
Right.
And see if they really work or not.
So what, in terms of a vaccine then, what's the difference between like what interferon is and a vaccine. And is this something that we all have to try to develop individually, or is there any kind of global collaboration on this?
Well, there's huge, lots of labs all over the world are trying to work on the vaccine right now. So there's global collaboration going on like crazy on trying to make a vaccine. Take multiple approaches. It's the way you should do it right now. Right? Everyone who could try should try the different ways they can and work together. And that's really happening, which is a really heartening thing to see.
That's great.
Interferon works completely different. It basically just interferes with replication of DNA and RNA. It interferes with replication of our own cells and of viruses. That's what it does. It's a compound our own bodies produce to interfere with replication. It also interferes with replication of our own cells. It damages us at the same time. But it's a means to try and stop the virus. It's part of our own normal immune response to viruses. We normally do produce interferons when we get a viral infection.
Okay.
So the Cuban thing would be adding a little bit more of it to us. It's not changing what our bodies are already doing.
Whereas a vaccine would actually kill the virus.
So what the vaccine does, it gets into your body. Your immune system responds to it as if it had been infected by a virus, but it wasn't. Just seen a protein from the virus, and now it sees the virus, it'll attack it immediately and prevent it from actually infecting you. That's a huge advantage. Once you've been sick, the same thing. You've got those antibodies. The vaccine skips that step. You don't have to get sick to get the antibodies. Your body, you get the proteins from the virus that can't hurt you. Your body reacts to it as if it's a real virus. It actually sees a real virus. It's able to neutralize it right away, which skips a huge problem being sick in the meantime. So it's a huge advantage.
That is great. I was speaking with Liz White from the Animal Protection Party, and she raised a concern about whether or not they're doing animal testing on these.
Yeah, they're certainly going to do that. That's one of the sad parts. They will do that.
What kind of animals?
Well, right now that I've seen literature, I've seen they're doing it in mice.
Now, as a scientist, I've heard people say that we're not mice, and
I know, but our immune systems do work pretty much the same way. Unfortunately, the odds are this will work. It's that standard ethical quandary. We could also try to test it on humans directly, but you can't get that many people to expose them to a virus. Give them we're not getting people to agree to be exposed to a deadly virus in order to test if the vaccine works, right?
Well, I heard something recently that somebody suggested they should have just tested in Africa. Did you hear about that one?
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, the WHO came out and said, that's terrible. We're not doing that.
Yeah, that's just saying, well, you people are worth less than us. Therefore, we're going to test it. That's just terrible. You can't do that.
Right. Okay. So who's going to ultimately get ownership of this vaccine?
That depends on how it gets developed. Usually what happens in the United States and Canada is it gets developed largely with public money, then it goes to a private company. But we'll have to wait and see what actually happens. Who develops it? How does it go? I don't know. I hope it becomes a public thing, but odds are high that it'll become a for-profit thing.
Oh, wait a minute, because we have socialized medicine in Canada. I mean, we're not
socialized health insurance. We don't have socialized medicine.
Okay.
We don't have a socialized pharmaceutical industry. We don't even have socialized doctors, do we? We have doctors in private practice generally, right? We have socialized health insurance. That's what Canada has. Britain has socialized medicine.
So they would be, if they got a hold of the vaccine, then they would own it publicly.
Well, sort of. Britain has socialized medicine, but not pharmaceuticals still. So pretty much, well, part of the problem is the people who can actually scale up are going to be the pharmaceutical industry. They've got the ability to produce the product once we have it ready, right? So what generally happens in the United States and Canada, I don't know about other countries because I've only lived in the United States and Canada, I basically do know. But the fact is, even if it's public developed, normally these things will be licensed to companies which will then produce the products. So there may be public benefit, public may get some payment for it, but generally speaking, the bulk of the profit will go to the company that's actually producing whatever it is that got developed.
Okay, well that seems like we could, this is a big time of change. I think that this is a time to look at our health system, which is responding quite well, I think.
Reasonably well. It could have responded much better, but it could have been much earlier, right? It could have been testing much more quickly, watching more carefully right from the bat. That would have saved an awful lot of lives. We didn't do it. We're doing better now, but we didn't do well at the beginning. We did quite poorly at the beginning.
So how soon did we know about this?
We knew about it in January. We only started reacting to it properly in March. So that's too slow.
That's economy driven, basically.
And politics driven. Politicians don't want to scare people. They want to make people happy, right? And they don't want to do things that are unpopular. When you don't see much disease, people are going to think, well, why am I being forced to stay at home? There's not much here. I don't see anybody sick, right? That's that problem as well. People generally don't really realize the problem until the problem's really big. Right. And, same thing with global warming. Most of us still are so comfortable. I can drive in my fact. Winter's less problem now. I can drive more do more things. I can fly, visit places. It's warmer most of the part of the year. People don't think well, for the most part, about what's really happening in their actions.
Right. Yeah, I want to talk about climate, but before we leave this topic, my friend keeps mentioning that Sweden apparently is just ignoring it and saying it's all going to go away. Are you aware of that situation?
Yeah, and it looks like they're changing their minds now after finding that they spiked way high compared to everybody else in their region, right? Because that was about as stupid a thing as you could possibly do. There's huge amounts of data saying, no, you do this, you're going to end up like Italy, right? I don't think hopefully they stop it before they get as bad as Italy, but you can't ignore it. And Italy is a really good example of why you can't ignore it. If you ignore it too long, look what happens, right?
Right.
And the United States is getting that way now too. Ignore it too long, look what happens.
Right. Wow.
And even here, we ignored it longer than we should have, so we got much more damage than we would otherwise have had.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hold on to we're flattening that curve in BC, and we're setting the example for the rest of Canada, perhaps. Okay. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, we're doing what we need to do now. Just wish we did a little earlier. That's all.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Now we're doing it. Vancouver Island has had 3 0 days in the past 2 weeks.
That's good. That's
days.
good.
Yeah.
People are staying home. People stay home. It'll work. Yeah. If we all stay home, it'll work.
Yeah. It seems to be we're getting there. Okay. So then, speaking of giant, enormous situations that people tend to ignore, then the climate situation. So. What just, in the last year or two, what are some things that have happened that maybe people just think, oh, what a horrible thing, but in fact, it was actually climate related? Can you think of any off the top?
Well, we can never prove it, but odds are nice hurricanes and things that are happening much more frequently, hurricane that hit or typhoon that hit the Philippines and the like, those are certainly more common because of climate change. You can't prove any particular thing came from any particular chain of events, but there are more of them than there used to be. There's certainly more damages, way more wildfires, which is almost certainly due largely to climate change. Drought because of climate change, drier trees, more fires, both BC, through a whole west coast North America, Australia to an extreme this year. Those are very problem with climate. They are climate related. They would still exist without the warming, but they would be far less severe. We've never seen this kind of severity in history, and that's essentially guaranteed to be due to climate change.
And so is there, is there a direct connection between this virus and climate change, or is it more to do with the animal situation?
It's not likely. You can't make strong statements. It's not likely to be climate change per se for the virus. It's much more likely bringing in lots of animals in close proximity to humans. That's by far the most likely thing. Right. And the fact there's so many more people. The more people they have, the more animals we're continuing to animals. The more animals we're exposed to, the more chances we have to get a virus to jump out of the animal into us, because there's more of us and we're using more of them. So it's
right.
It's a vicious circle unless we change what we're eating.
Right. It comes down to that lifestyle choice then, that by consuming animals, we're decimating the environment, we're contributing to climate change, and we're allowing for the proliferation of these viruses. That, so potentially, we're in spring, it's pleasant, the flowers are out, the birds are singing. I've heard that there might be a second wave of this that comes in the fall, this virus, and
which is common.
Right.
I think it's mostly common for the reasons that people are going back to school, going back to work,
right,
from distant places. That's why we tend to get second waves of things.
But if that comes
crowding together again
in conjunction with like typhoons and hurricanes and storm season, this is potentially, just not a nice scenario.
No, we need. That's what I was kind of glad to hear Trudeau say today. We're going to be having a very abnormal life for at least a year, because that's accurate. If we can maintain that, somehow keep our economy going at the same time, we'll be much less damaged than if we can't maintain that.
Right. So, yeah, I'm kind of pleased. I have to say, I'm strangely satisfied with Mr. Trudeau for a change. Usually we're railing against him for pipelines and such things.
Yeah, yes. On this one, he's more or less stepping up as he should, which is good to see.
You know, I got $2,000 in my bank account today because I'm out of work. And
that's nice. I'm glad you got that money. Great. Yeah, right? I managed to maintain my work, so I'm okay. I haven't had to go for that, but I'm really glad to hear that you got it. That's great.
Thank you. Me too. You know, and I know there's a lot of people who aren't eligible, but every time he comes out, he says, well, you know what, we're hearing from these people, students, for example, and so now they're working on taking care of students. It's interesting that it takes something like this for government
to start doing what they need to do. We should have been doing a long time ago, yes.
That's right. So I'm hoping we'll just extend this universal basic income in perpetuity, and then
and tax heavily so no one can take over control of the economy or huge parts of the economy. Keep things from Amazon from developing.
Right, Amazon Corp. Yeah, what about that? Why are we shipping masks and medical supplies through Amazon Canada, do you think?
Well, they've got a good distribution network, and that's probably a good reason. But they also have way too much power.
Yeah, I mean, I think Canada Post has pretty good.
Yeah, well, doing both is okay, right? But when you got an emergency, you can ship whatever way you can, to as many ways as you can, I guess.
All right. Well, okay. So speaking of taxation, animal agriculture and oil and gas are both huge recipients of tax or of
subsidies, one way, directly or indirectly. Yes.
Right, but they don't necessarily pay a lot of taxes.
I suspect they don't. They probably net very little since they get huge subsidies, especially oil and gas in Canada. Canada's not quite as bad at animal ag subsidized as the United States is, but they're all getting commodity supports and things like that, which is the main subsidy of animal ag is commodity support. Pay for corn and soy and things that prices get propped up by government. Either directly, Canada is more by sort of controlling the market. The United States is more like directly giving money to the corporations, but it's the same fundamental thing of having people subsidize things that aren't so good for us.
Yeah, and it's time
for the world.
I think this is just a great time to really look at everything and think about how can we help these farmers get off animal agriculture. Are you familiar with the reformation work that Mercy for Animals is doing?
I know a bit about it, yes. One of the biggest problems is going to be the fact we'll need a lot less farmers if we're all on plant-based, right? We have to somehow figure out a way to transition them out of it, because animal agriculture is extremely inefficient. We're producing a huge, depends on the animal, but on average, roughly six pounds of protein for every 1 pound of protein you get back from animals. That's you're wasting on average 6 times as much. You're using 6 times as much plant material as you'd otherwise need. So we have to do two things. We need to retrain farmers to do better farming, and we also need to help farmers become something else, because we're going to need fewer of them as we transition out of meat. So we need to get ourselves into a society that takes care of people and helps us go to the places we need to be to make the world a better place. And one of our big problems is, a huge part of farming is dependent on corn and soy, which is fed to animals. And that's because it's outrageously inefficient. So once we get rid of the inefficiency, we'll need fewer farmers. So we'll have to figure out how to help them make livings other ways.
Well, on the other hand, too, if we, we're looking at how much food we import now, I think we're all a little bit more aware that our supply chain comes through the U.S. for the most part, and maybe it's time to look at that. And so things like oat milk are taking off in Canada.
That's good. Yep.
Yeah.
There's good things happening. And that's what we want to happen, right? Sylvain Charlebois out of Dalhousie noting veganism was rising dramatically in Canada, especially in BC. And demand for products is going up because of it, which is great. And people trying to reduce their meat consumption as well, which is probably the majority of people. But the fact is that this is going in the right direction. I totally agree. We just have to be intelligent in how to make it go so that we do the best, most good, and least harm in making it go in the right direction.
And then also we can transition away from fossil fuels and fracking and all of that. Now's a good time to do that too.
So it's essential to do it. We're nuts if we don't. I haven't read the paper. Just got sent to me a paper at PNAS prestigious National Academy of Sciences. In the United States today, I haven't read it yet, but saying that we may face a terrible climate tipping point within the next 10 years. And so I haven't really evaluated it yet, but that's scary. So we need to react now on climate change as well. And maybe this little bit wake-up call will help us, but I'm not optimistic on it. I don't trust us.
Well, look at Jason Kenney next door there. He's laid off a whole bunch of workers, and they're propping up the corporations again.
And they're facing an enormous crisis. They've got all their eggs in the wrong basket, as you might say, right? Now, what's oil? I heard what, $3 a barrel for Alberta crude now. Obviously, you cannot maintain an economy on that basis. So maybe this will help wake us up into moving away from fossil fuels as well. But the reason the oil price is so low now is because people are driving, flying less, and there's a price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia on oil right now, which is driven down even further.
Why do you think that people like Jason Kenney are so hanging on so tight to the reins of this dinosaur?
I can't speak to it. I don't understand it well, but I guess it's a large proportion of the electorate in Alberta depends on, makes their living from fossil fuel industry, and so they'll vote for people who say, I'm going to protect the fossil fuel industry. I think that is a fundamental thing.
And then now he's just fired them, and there is no fossil fuel industry. So,
well, I don't know if he fired them per se. The industry collapsed, and now they got a total mess. It's a more accurate way to put it, I think.
Right. Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's go back to the happy things that are happening then, and what up until our current bit of a shift, what was happening at Earthsave, and how are you guys adjusting?
Well, we're doing pretty well. We like last year we put on a vegan festival. Our first one was really successful. Unfortunately, of course, this year we won't be able to hold it because we can't have thousands of people coming to a festival in the middle of a pandemic. Our main focus has been to continue to educate. We put articles on our website at least once a week now. Matter of fact, there's one. If you go to our blog, you'll see one published yesterday precisely on this pandemic from one of our board members, Jennifer Flood. We continue with education. We've had to stop our public talks. The last public talk I gave was in late February, but we routinely give public talks. They're just not practical now. I was going to give a bunch of talks for TransLink, which is great. They lined me up for 8 talks to TransLink staff and over the summer, but now they've all been canceled.
Yeah, well, I was wondering about that with these talks that you were giving to TransLink and elsewhere. Is Zoom, or there's other similar programs, is that an option for you guys?
What do you mean? We give talks to high schools frequently. We give high school students public talks to community centers, to environmental organizations. We were going to give talks to TransLink. That didn't happen. The first one was supposed to be March 31st, and for obvious reasons, that didn't happen. But yet, when we can talk, we do really well. We give a lot of talks, we get lots of interest. It's very heartening to see how interested people are and open to the message nowadays, especially high school students. So
well, that's great.
So the world's going the right way. We just have a short break where we have to be a little quiet about it. Not quiet, but won't be able to speak directly to people like we used to.
Except, for example, I'm working in the school system, and I know that teachers are now using a Zoom-type platform to outreach to their students. Apparently, Rob Fleming, the Minister of Education, bought a license for the whole province, so they can have their own system. They don't have to log in with their personal email and stuff like that. So, I would imagine there's ways to plug into that.
Well, maybe we'll see. We'll have to see if we send our invitations. If they respond, we can do it. Okay. At the moment, I suspect their interest right now is just getting this whole thing up and going. I suspect by fall we'll be able to do something again.
Okay.
Of this. So this is local stuff. We're worldwide through Facebook. We have 30,000 people a week will check our posts on Facebook, which is good, all over the world. The number one, Canada's only number 2 if people like the page. Not surprisingly, India's number 1. There's a lot more people in India. So once on Facebook, people will find you wherever you are in the world. So we reach people across the world that way still. And we have, Instagram we use to some extent, Twitter. Our webpage, like I said, we put out a new article every week where it's relevant on our webpage. And I'm giving an interview to another person at 4:30 today. So we're also doing interviews, as you might have noticed.
Cool. Okay. And so it's earthsave.ca.
Yep, earthsave.ca is our page. And for Facebook, you go to facebook.com/Earthsave Canada, and that will get you to, there's articles every day posted, recipes, information. Some of our own articles, mostly articles elsewhere we find on the web to keep the information flowing. And I think there's 14,500 followers roughly right now, and more than twice that number of people who see our things every week, according to Facebook's data. Another nice thing I've noticed in our data is that, as you probably know, historically, vegan women outnumber men about 2 to 1. We see that, this is only a proxy, I can't say much, but we see that true. When we go past about age 35 up, it is about 2 to 1 women to men who like the page, but younger than that, it's 1 to 1. So that's a trend I like to see. To see just as many men as women, 35 and under, like Earthsave's page. You can take that as a proxy for progress. And I think the fact is that the plant-based movement is moving strongly in the young. That's probably a good proxy. I suspect that the gender balance is fading. I think that's a good sign that it is. That's one of the things I like to see there. It's really nice to see that among the younger people, it's 1 to 1 men to women who like our page, as far as you can take that.
That's awesome.
I do think it's good. Yeah. I think it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're definitely facing a lot of different things than we had to think about when we were youngsters.
Yes, that's for sure.
And they're going to be much more conscientious, I like to think, about how they proceed.
Well, I definitely noticed that in the high schools. The interest is much higher. If you're talking to high school students compared to an older group, the interest and the questions are much better, much higher quality, much more concerned than they are speaking to, say, a group of typical people. Unless they're environmentalists, typical people sort of, okay, that's interesting, and they walk away. Whereas you're talking to high school students, questions galore. There's a great deal of interest and real concern. And if occasionally I've been walked up to when we were giving booths and things where students said, I saw you give a talk, you changed my life, which is really nice to see. They are paying attention. So it's really good to see the young people are getting somewhere, and reaching the young people is really important, I think. And that's one thing. I'm glad I can do that in the Vancouver area. I hope people all over the world can do the same thing, get into high schools and talk about what the real crisis we face is in animal ag, destroying our planet and contributing to global warming, doing so much harm. And I'm glad that we get to do that. But we only do it in Vancouver personally. I give them in Vancouver. We have another speaker as well in Vancouver, but of course we don't have people in every city everywhere who can do it.
So when you go into the schools, I mean, what kind of reception do you get is it from a school board level that you get in there?
Usually it's the principals and the teachers. Principals or teachers. I send messages to the principals and teachers I've already spoken to in the past and ask for invitations. Spoke to the Vancouver School Board's Sustainability Conference this year and the year before as well. So get invited. The Vancouver School Board does invite us to speak to some of their events. But mostly you're dealing with the principals or the teacher-specific classes to get into these things.
And is it mostly from an environmental science, the climate science perspective?
Yeah, when I give a talk, I talk about environment, both climate and pollution in general. I talk about the effects on animals. I show pictures. I don't show lots of major pictures, but I show some pictures of what the animals go through. I talk about a bit of our health, some of the health advantages that I think are a lucky bonus. We get health advantages out of it. But the main focus is environment. That's what they want. You feed that, and it's easy. You tie the other things in at the same time, which is what I do. I tie it all in together. Usually, it's for high school. It's usually 40 minutes, but I've given talks as long as 3 hours when I've had to. And there's an awful lot of information you can get across if one gets the chance. And interest is really high in the high schools. It's sky high.
Well, I happen to be in a high school. I'm a casual, so I float around, and I happen to be in a high school in September when Greta arrived by sailboat over there on the other coast. And I was surprised how many people didn't know about Greta. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm surprised because in my experience, everyone seems to know.
Well, they do now. And they certainly were down, the rallies were well attended. But I think once she landed on the shores here, that's when things really started to take off. I haven't really been following what's going on with her.
I heard she was sick. She got the virus, but she's recovered. And there's a bit of coverage. If you go to our Facebook page, a couple of days ago, you can scroll down. There's something on her about just a couple of days. There's some coverage happening, but she's not doing a lot. She's just, the coverage was basically saying we got to deal with this crisis, and we can't ignore the climate crisis. That's essentially what that coverage was, and about her family life and how she grew up, and her how brilliant she was as a kid, but also how emotional turmoil it was, that kind of story.
Okay.
So right now it's sort of a personal interest story, but also noting that she is saying, no, we have to pay attention to both of these crises, not just one crisis.
She definitely follows the science.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she does.
Yes, she does. All right. Well, and I really thank you for taking this time today.
Oh, I'm glad to have been able to.
Yeah.
Really nice talking with you.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to just close on? We're sending people to your website, earthsave.ca. I guess they can make donations there if they want.
Yeah, you can make donations there. Yeah. There's a big donation button there. I think there's also a donation button on our Facebook page if you want to click that. And that's basically through Canada Helps. So it's very easy. You make your donation. Canada Helps will automatically give you your donation receipt, which is good. Financially, we're doing quite well, which is nice. We can always use more donations. We'll never turn them down.
You still have a good charitable status with
Yes. We are a registered charity. Things are good. So
awesome.
We're pleased that way.
So great.
And we hope to reach more and more people, and especially as people get more aware of how tenuous their lives are. Maybe we'll have a better chance of reaching them.
Education is number one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, David, thanks a lot. We'll chat again sometime.
Yep. Nice talking with you, Janine. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This could be a teachable moment, though it more just looks like a mess. How long the moment might last is anyone's guess. For all of the bold propaganda, what kind of system is best? The moments like this one are the test. Where did they stay ahead of the curve? Where did they just run out of soap? Once the world shut down its borders, which countries were able to cope? Once this pandemic is over, this could be a teachable moment. The moment we find out how much it can be so hard to get through just a day when you can't touch someone that you know, to hold their hands in yours. How interminable the walls, the ceilings, floors. How long a day goes on, how lonely life can be, how much we're all a part of a society. Once this pandemic is over, this could be a teachable moment where anyone with half a brain understands that we're all just as good as the weakest link in the chain. With exponential growth, one for all and all for one is the only way to hope to slow such a viral run. With some of us in mansions and others left in tents, while what's drifting in the air won't be kept out by a fence. Once the pandemic is over, this could be a teachable moment, though at the price of so many lives lost. To be stratified and divided, death is the cost. After all of the funerals, after we've mourned all the dead, might we then have a world that's bound by a common thread? A thread that is sewn like a virus and connects us all worldwide. Maybe then we can say there's a reason your grandparents died. Once this pandemic is over, once this pandemic is over,